Hi, and welcome back to Elektro Vox. We're at Resistance 2025, and we're joined by Aesthetic Perfection. So, Daniel, thank you ever so much.
My pleasure, my pleasure.
Some people might know watching that Daniel was actually my first ever video interview with Elektro Vox, and also my first text interview, I believe, as well, strangely enough. I remember jumping into that backstage and then you going, is it on video? Would you like it on video? And I wasn't prepared at all. So it's a nice full circle that Elektro Vox sort of started with you, and we're talking to you again.
Well, I'm honored to be a part of the history, and I'm glad that we can, yeah, like you said, bring this around again full circle.
Yeah. And of course, speaking of full circles, this tour that you're on, 20th anniversary
Yeah.
of Close to Human.
Yep.
And you've had a real arduous adventure bringing it back to life. So yeah, if you could tell us a bit about the journey you've had there.
Yeah, you know, it's like, I remember back in the early 2000s when, you know, Aesthetic Perfection was considered like the new band. And I don't know at what point that I actually recognized that I was no longer like a new artist, rather, I mean, I don't even know what you would call it, but little engine that could, I guess, at this point. You know, the fact that it's been 2 decades since my debut album is just, I mean, I don't think it blows anybody's mind more than it blows mine. And so, you know, I was kind of faced with this decision, which is, you know, how do I properly celebrate this kind of important milestone? I mean, 20 years is crazy. It's like I started this band when I was 17. I'm 42 now. So this band has been a part of my life longer than it's not been a part of my life. So yeah, I was faced with this choice. Like, do I just kind of go for the lazy remaster? Because, you know, for those who don't know, I lost the majority of the original recordings in a pretty catastrophic hard drive crash not long after the album came out, 2005, late 2005, early 2006, and I only really had the original master, and I had a secondary master left over, which was done actually by the late great Mike Wells of Gridlock, and then I had the pre-master. So I was like, well, I could do something with these, but you know, I like challenge. I like forcing myself to do things that are kind of unexpected, and so I thought that I would task myself with just re-recording the entire album from the ground up, because why not? So I actually, I figured if I'm going to do this, I got to do it right. So I went and reacquired all the original gear, all the original hardware that I used at that time, all the original sample CDs, and I just got to work, and it took about a half a year of my life. It was pretty arduous, but I'm just beyond proud of the results, because it was just like, I don't know, like artistically trying to re-inhabit the mind of, you know, 22-year-old Daniel as 42-year-old Daniel is just very, very interesting indeed. You know, I spent there were a lot of moments where I was just like, what the fuck was I thinking? Like, what kind of artistic choices are these? But, you know, sort of viewing that whole thing through the lens of the artist that I am now was actually just very rewarding. It made me like very, very grateful of where I've come from, because, you know, like, I'm not an artist. I'm not somebody who likes to spend a lot of time thinking about the past. But as I said, this was a milestone. Felt like I should do it right. And doing it was actually very difficult, but very enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, trying to pick your own brains from 20 odd years ago, you say you got, some bits still lying around, but did you have to fight your own memory to try and remember every single little thing?
Well, no, because I have the original album still. Like I don't have it broken up into stems, but I've got the released album. So I essentially just took like the album versions of the songs, dragged them into my music software. So it's basically like, okay, like line it up on the grid and just start going. And then you just like highlight a section, listen to it over and over again, try to craft the sounds that you hear, and just move on section to section to section. And I'm not one to brag very often, but I was able in some sections to get the remake to phase cancel itself with the original. And for people who are not technically savvy, essentially like if you take the same audio file and you lay it over itself and you switch the phase, you can actually get the audio to cancel itself out. That's because all of the frequencies are the same, and so they're overlapping each other, but in negative, cancels each other out. So in certain sections, if you lay the redid version on top of the original version and switch the phase, it cancels certain sections out, which is just, I was like, trying to brag about that to my wife, who has no interest in music or technical stuff. It was very much a sort of like, great, I don't understand what that means, but it sounds very, very cool. So
it's quite an achievement. Most people who would lose their work would just go, I have no ability to deal with that, absolutely not. So the fact that you've done it is incredible.
I didn't have the ability to do it 20 years ago, but I think that's just kind of like a testament to the artistic growth that I've somehow managed to conjure out of the ether over the last 2 decades.
Yeah, and even though you've rebuilt the album as it was, I'm assuming you've put in everything you've learned since as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But it was important to me not to like George Lucas it too much. Like I didn't want to rewrite the past. Add a lot of stuff that wasn't there in the original. I wanted to make sure that this new version was as close of a recreation as physically possible.
Yeah, nice. Okay. And with the way that music's been over the last few years, you've become sort of like the pioneer in terms of how to deal with Bandcamp releases, Spotify releases, where you were releasing single after single until an album comes out. You've had a lot of bands copy you, of course. You've had a lot of bands criticize you, I suppose, in a way. So in this aspect, have you had a lot of people reach out to you for advice, or has something unexpected happened from it all?
It's odd. I don't really consider myself much of a pioneer because really we're all just standing on the shoulders of giants, right? Like I think that if I have any skill that maybe other contemporary artists don't have, like sort of in our scene, is that I just always have my ear to the ground. I'm constantly paying attention to what other people are doing around me, like, sort of, and not just in our thing, like, in the wider music scene, because my idea of doing singles, that was because pop and EDM artists were doing it and they were having enormous success with it. So it's like, I can't claim to have come up with this idea. I just decided to do it in our thing because I saw that trying to repeat this business model that literally every person in the industry was just hell-bent on sticking to wasn't working.
Yeah.
And so I was just basically seeing what was successful in other genres and thinking about how can I apply that to my own career, because it's like, we don't create art because we want to be successful. We create art because we need to express ourselves. But once the expression phase has ended, then you need to put on your sort of business hat and say, how do I put this out into the world in a way where it can be received by the most amount of people, because that's really what you want to do. Like, as an artist, it's about finding what it is you want to say and how to transmit that in a way that the people that you want to reach are going to hear it. Because it's like, you can have the greatest idea in the world, but if you're speaking Spanish in a room full of people who speak Mandarin, they're not going to get that idea. So I think it's the artist's job to speak the language of the zeitgeist and understand how to best convey your ideas to the people who might be receptive to them.
Yeah, it's like artistic freedom versus, capitalistic algorithms, isn't it? It's quite about.
But also it's like you don't even need to reduce it to something like, don't get me wrong, like I love business. Like I find business to be incredibly fascinating and interesting, but a lot of people don't want to think about art at all through the lens of consumerism and capitalism, and fine, whatever. I mean, if that's not the way you want to look at it, that's cool. You can just simply look at it as art is a medium of expression and a conversation with other people. Like we create art to express ourselves, but to have a dialogue with the people who are going to consume it. And I think that if you are not able to put that together in a way where people are going to understand it, you may not be able to reach people who really would connect with it and resonate it and get something from it. So you don't even need to tie it to money. You can just say, like, I want to communicate with people, and how do I communicate with people the best?
You've obviously worked with a lot of big artists over the years. And of course, with the way that your business model is and the way you adapt it, the networking only ever grows stronger. So, is there still some bands out there that you dream to work with but haven't done so yet?
No, and I'll say why, because I think that to collaborate with somebody is something that I'm trying to think of the best way to articulate it, because I've actually never had to articulate it in this way before, but I think it's almost like a kind of romantic compatibility, right? Like if you're not on the same wavelength as somebody, it doesn't matter how you sort of perceived them before. It's like when you are in this relationship, you realize, this just isn't working. So from an outside perspective, I could sit here and be like, oh, I would love to work with Trent Reznor or blah, 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 blah. But put me in the same room with Trent Reznor and maybe we don't get along. Maybe we don't have the resonance to where it's like we could actually create something interesting together. And so I've had these moments where it's like, oh my God, I get to work with somebody who I have admired and respected my whole life, and then you realize when you're working with them, you're like, this sucks. This isn't fun. And you get in the same room with someone you would think that you would never be artistically compatible with, and you're like, this is awesome, right? So I just try to remain open to the connections that sort of present themselves in this kind of like whirlwind life that I'm living. I think what I will say is that working with Sean Bevan from He's worked with like everybody for, mostly famous for Nine Inch Nails, but he's done Guns N' Roses, Marilyn Manson, like all this stuff. Sean Bevan was somebody that was kind of like on the top of my short list of somebody to work with in terms of like mixing, because I love the way that he's able to blend like the organic and the mechanical sounds. Like so much of the sound of like Downward Spiral is like Sean Bevan, right? And I was very apprehensive about extending that olive branch because, from past experiences, I was like, maybe this is gonna suck. Maybe this is gonna kind of like ruin my appreciation of Sean Bevan. But man, like that experience, that was just so fantastic. And I'll just share real quick how that happened. I was working on my last EP, the Bad Vibes EP, which is probably the most like industrial metal thing that I've ever created. And I know Danny Lohner fairly well because we've been on tour a lot. He's playing bass in Till Lindemann. We get on really, really well. It's also kind of surreal, just like I'm friends with Danny Lohner from Nine Inch Nails. It's pretty weird. I was trying to find the right person to mix this Bad Vibes EP of mine. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna reach out to Danny and see if I can get Sean Bevan to do it. So I reach out to Danny, like, hey, Sean Bevan, right? Do you think he might be interested in this project? And Danny's like, oh yeah, of course. He used to be my roommate. 2 seconds. Within 30 seconds, he's created, like a group chat with me and Sean Bevan, and Danny Lohner is like, yo, Sean, you got to talk to Daniel. He's super cool, and everything that he does is awesome. I think you guys would do great work together. And Sean Bevan's like, oh yeah, man, this is great. I checked out your stuff. Really, really love it. Yeah, back when I was working with Trent on Downward Spiral and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just looking at my phone like, is this conversation happening? Am I like on drugs? Am I really like in a group chat with Danny Lohner and Sean Bevan, and they're like talking about my music? This is insane. And he was just so humble and so just like dedicated to like helping this EP be as good as it possibly could have been, and that will go down as probably one of the most surreal and rewarding experiences that I've had. So to answer your question, no specific people in mind, but I would just love to kind of have the universe deliver a handful more of experiences like that before I'm too old to keep going.
Well, I think that is the best articulated answer I've ever had to that question, actually. So, yeah, most people just go, this guy, moving on. Yeah.
I don't know, like, I spend every day of my life, like, thinking about this stuff. Like, I like lay in bed and it's like 2 a.m. and I'm like, I would love to work with Trent Reznor, but would you really? Would that be as satisfying as you have made it up in your head and blah, blah, blah? So it's like, I'm mostly just having these conversations with myself. So now that I've got an audience, it's also weird. It's like, why does anybody care?
I mean, moving on from the artist side of things and moving on to the fan side of things. So you've been going a long time. Have you had any particularly memorable fan moments?
Yeah. I mean, like that question is like what's the craziest thing that's ever happened to you on tour questions? Like when you're underneath the light, and the camera's rolling, and somebody says, "Tell me something really, really fascinating and hilarious and interesting." Go. You're like, your brain, yes. you blank, and then the second you walk away, or you either blank or you tell a story that is just terrible, and then when the interview's done, you walk away and you go, "Oh man, I could have said X, Y, Z," because all the real stories sort of just pop back into your brain because you're not pressuring yourself. I will just say, like, I've had a lot of, I've been doing this 2 decades. I've met thousands and thousands of people from all walks of life, from basically every corner of the globe. And I'll just say that, like, for me, the most humbling and kind of amazing experience is the fact that I still get to do this, and that in the grand scheme of things, like when it all sort of boils down to what it all boils down to is that people are all the same. Doesn't matter who they are, where they come from. and the way that art connects with them is just, it's kind of like magical, right?
Yeah.
And that I am able to still be here after so many years, still able to connect with people, still have people come up to me and say, hey, you know, this thing that you did all these years ago still means something to me today. You know, so it's like, I don't go back and listen to my old music very often. So when somebody comes up to me and says, hey, this thing that you did 15 years ago, this still connects with me now, today. That's the, you know, I'm not a superstitious, you know, magical thinking type person. I'm very sort of grounded, but there's magic in that, I think.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's hard to narrow down, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
So just two final questions for you then. Yeah, which one of your songs do you love to play the most?
I think that I have a very complicated relationship with my own music, because it's like, it's never good enough. And I am unable to hear it in the same way that everybody else hears it. When I hear something that I've created, all I can find are the flaws, and I just spend, you know, really the majority of the time feeling almost kind of like, you know, you're like cringing at yourself. It's like hearing your own voice on an answering machine, but, you know, like magnified by a million. And performing live is actually something that I despise doing. Like, I just hate playing live.
I'm surprised, because you do it so well.
Because if I'm good at playing live, if there's anything I do good, it's because I spend so much time practicing it to avoid being as bad as I am in my own mind.
Relatable.
And you know, when sometimes I'll even lay awake at night unable to sleep, feeling physically ill because I'm thinking about a show that's coming up, because I'm just that, I don't know, like it's something that does not come naturally to me. But I do it because it's not about me. It's not for me. I do it because it brings joy to other people. And it allows me to continue doing this for a living and doing what brings me the most joy, which is sitting in my studio alone, experimenting, playing, you know, creating new music. So I play the songs that people want to hear and that gets the most reaction from them, because, you know, I'm really only there for them.
Yeah.
And there's maybe every now and then there's like these moments where you're like, oh man, I'm just let go and having fun, but I'm spending the entire time like, do I step here, do I go here, do I pose this, do this, oh, this note's coming up, think about that. Well, it's just this overwhelming mental exercise, you know, like I just feel like I'm doing it for an hour straight, and I come off stage and I'm more mentally exhausted than I even am physically exhausted, because it's just you're trying to play like 3D chess, and it's yeah.
It's a good insight into the mind of an artist, and I really appreciate your honesty in that.
But you know, the thing is that I know so many people that feel completely differently about it. You know, I have friends and colleagues who live for the stage, and they say the only reason they go into the studio is so they can go on stage, because stage is the only place they're free. For me, being on stage is actually a cage, and the freedom is in the creativity, is when when I'm alone in my studio, and there's the pressure is actually much less there. That's much more akin to play, right? Like you get to experiment and have fun, and yeah.
Necessary response to being an artist, you might say.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And the very last thing I just want to ask you then is, have you got anything you'd like to say to your fans?
Thank you for coming along this just completely bizarre ride that is, you know, aesthetic perfection. Like, I don't think people knew what they were signing up for when I was putting out these first couple records. I didn't even know what I was signing up for. I was just a kid who was trying to make sense of the world and make sense of make sense of my own sort of inner experience, and doing so helped me kind of probably save me in more ways than I think most people would really realize. And I think when somebody comes up to me and says, "Hey, you know, your music saved my life or changed my life, thank you so much," you know, I think a lot of them have it in their head that this is just kind of like a one-sided experience. Because for me, as I said earlier, it's like this is communication with other people, and to know that what I do resonates with other people, connects with them, and matters to them, it keeps me motivated, because obviously, like, I'm just a person. I suffer from all the same kind of insecurities that every other person does, and you know, I very often am asking myself, like, what is this all worth? Like, do I keep going? Like, you know, am I even good at this? Does anybody care? And so when people come up to me and give me that validation, it's like, it keeps me motivated, keeps me grounded, it keeps me helps me keep my eye on the ball. So I think I'm just very, very grateful to the people who still listen, still show up, still care about the music made by this now no longer new band, now just a middle-aged dude trying to not hurt his back when he's on stage.
Nice. Well, thank you ever so much for joining me again, Daniel.
It's my pleasure. Let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, and thank you everyone for watching.